Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode is once again brought to you by our friends over at Galactic Comics and Collectibles at galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. This episode features Patrick Barb, author of books that are weird, dark, and horrifying. He has a number of novellas and short story collections out there right now. His new novella, part of the Killer VHS series, Night of the Witch Hunter, which is the sixth book in the series, comes out March 18th from Shortwave Publishing. Patrick was fantastic on this episode. But before you listen, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, all those things. You can rate, review, subscribe over on Apple or Spotify or wherever you find your podcasts. You can find us over on YouTube as well as capesandtights.com. Enjoy this episode with author Patrick Barb. Welcome to the podcast, Patrick. How are you?
I'm doing great, Justin. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. You know what's so funny is like if Shortwave continues to put these Killer VHS books out, I think I have no shortage of guests that I would want to have on the podcast for sure.
That was the idea, right? We just get the assembly line for Justin. I'd talk to Alan about it.
Well, then at some point I got to get Alan on. Like that's like you know the architect of it all, right?
Really a great guy, smart publisher. Just really knows what he's doing, and it always feels good when you work with somebody that knows what they're doing. So that helps a lot.
It seems like he's passionate. That's one thing I think if you follow someone on social media and you see them, you know, repping their thing, sometimes you just feel like you throw stuff out there to be like, okay, like my stuff or buy my stuff.
Right.
But then there's like this way of a personality that puts things out there being like, I'm putting this out there for you to buy. Yes, I need to make money, but I'm also passionate about what I'm doing. And I think that's what Alan has for sure with Shortwave.
Totally. He's got like you said, he's got the heart, he's got the business sense, and just a killer design sense. I mean, look at the covers alone. That'll tell you everything you need to know.
I thought about it this morning. You mentioned that the design sense then before we get like dive into a little bit about you and in your book, but was that how dope? I mean, I've had Tim Jacobus on the podcast before, who did the artwork for the Goosebumps original covers.
Oh,
And
awesome.
I was like, how dope would it be for Alan to like design? Because Alan does the design around the actual like, illustration in the middle, like on your book, on Night of the Witch Hunter. But the artwork in the inside would be dope if Tim did one because it's been compared to like the adult Goosebumps. How amazing would it be eventually to have like a Tim Jacobus cover for? I don't know if he's allowed to because of the fact that it's been compared to Goosebumps, but you know, it'd be kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what can happen? And there's always special editions, right?
Yep.
Just let's plant some seeds right now with Alan and see what we can make happen.
I always think they just put it out in the ether. Just say it and it will come maybe one day, you know. And if it does come at this point and they've been working on it for a long time, I'm going to take credit for it still, though.
Exactly. There you go. See, you're getting it.
But I mean, you know, before we get, you know, into Night of the Witch Hunter specifically, what's your history with horror and horror writing in general? Like, tell us a little bit about yourself, Patrick.
Yeah. So I grew up 80s, 90s kid in Virginia, Tennessee. Went to college, went to New York, and worked in book publishing for many years. 6 years on the East Coast in New York, and then a few years in California before ending up here where I'm at now in Minnesota. And writing had always been a part of my life, like something since the first grade. Once I figured out that people wrote the stories that I was reading, I was like, this is the best job. I want to do this. Horror came in fits and starts. So got really into the Universal monsters when I was in elementary school. Then I got into the slashers and horror movies around the time of like Scream, which was the first R-rated movie I ever saw in the theater. And then I'd always wanted to write in that genre. Like something clicked eventually where I was like, I like scary stories. I used to be terrified of horror movies. I couldn't even watch the commercials on TV. And I tried screenwriting for a bit and getting that sort of form down, but I had been hesitant to try prose, short stories in particular, until probably around 2019, which is when we moved to Minnesota, and I took some time off to be freelance, which is the first time when I didn't have a 9 to 5 job, didn't have that kind of grind of, especially working in book publishing where you're reading somebody else's work so much. You run out of fuel, at least I did, for the creative process yourself. So here I was, I had a blank slate, so to speak, and I just started reading all the horror fiction I could get my hands on. Everything from like short story collections, weird fiction, Laird Barron, Stephen Graham Jones, Kelly Link, Gemma Files, other people like that, absorbing and absorbing. And then I had time to start writing and start submitting stuff. And so sending out short stories, eventually getting stuff published, eventually kind of getting stuff noticed. And then I sold a novella and another novella, and then I sold a collection of short stories, and things kind of blossomed from there. Where eventually I could come to Alan and say, "Hey, I got this idea for the Killer VHS series," and kind of pitch you. And he said yes, and here we are.
Yeah, that's just funny because it's obviously a question that people probably ask you or other people in interviews and things like that, which is, where you approached, did you have an idea, so on and so forth, Killer VHS. Was this a story, I'm guessing, Night of the Witch Hunter, now you mentioned, is a story that you had like percolating that fit into the Killer VHS series?
Yeah, this is an idea that I'd had for a long time. I wanted to do this kind of witch hunter and coming into the 20th century, because it said 1999,
Mm.
and bringing in like the ancestor of a witch. And I had it as like a screenplay idea, and I was playing around with it for all these different forms and trying to figure out the right,
Hmm.
you try to figure out the right bucket for it, right? When you have these ideas. And the Killer VHS series came out, and I read first two books in that series, the Melonhead Mayhem by Alex Ebenstein and the Candy Cane book by Brian McCauley. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is it. This is the form, because it's novella length. So it's all killer, no filler,
Hmm.
basically, when you're at this length. But it's still long enough to tell a story, to get kind of this in-depth experience and to meet a lot of characters. Whereas a short story, you're kind of limited to certain parameters, whether it
Hmm.
be like character or setting or whatever. So yeah, I reached out to Alan, and he knew of my work from, he published my short story Haunting Lessons as a chapbook at Shortwave.
Hmm.
And I guess he kind of knew me otherwise as well from just being online in the horror and writing spaces. So yeah, he said I'd love to take a look at it, and it sounds like a great pitch, because I think we pitched it as something like um, The Craft crossed with Nightmare on Elm Street, because I wanted to have this kind of supernatural Freddy Krueger esque figure, like
Hmm.
thinking more of like Freddy in the very first Nightmare on Elm Street,
Yeah.
where yes, he's saying things that are clever, but he's not punning, he's not like rapping or whatever. It's you're still afraid of him basically, and so that was the basic idea. And based off that, he was like, "Send me a pitch." So I wrote something up, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, so it's based in 1999. It's getting ready for Y2K in Fallen Church, New Hampshire. Is there other than the fact that witches are prevalent in New England in the lore of New England? Other than that, is there a reason why Fallen Church, New Hampshire, that being in New Hampshire is a reason why you put it there?
I guess it's a mix of things. I feel like Massachusetts had a lot of coverage on the witch front,
Yes.
so I wanted to like give a little nod to another part of the area. I have some friends and an ex-girlfriend from New Hampshire, so I
Okay.
figured, I had this strange familiarity that stuck with me with New Hampshire, and so that was sort of where it landed from.
It's just funny too because we've had a previous guest and a friend of the podcast, Travis Gibb, a comic book writer, has a book called Granite State Punk, which is a witch story based in New Hampshire, and he
Hmm.
does it on purpose. Same thing because there was witches in lore in history
Yeah,
in New Hampshire, and so he's like, yeah, it's same thing. There's too many witches stories that happened in Massachusetts. Let's just do. I mean, it's not like people didn't travel back and forth or here and there, or things didn't travel in that area. New England
yeah,
is known for
exactly. It's
witches, so.
Yeah. So I was like, let's spread the love a little bit.
Did you see Y2K, the movie?
I have not. It's on my list. Once that trailer came out, though, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm onto something here. It's in the air.
But I know the reason I brought it up was because, and I've discussed this actually on a previous episode recently. I don't know why it came up. I can't remember now, but like the Y2K had so many references to Y2K. And I was born in 86. So yeah, the Y2K, I was 14 years old. Like I vividly remember where I was in the basement
Hmm.
when the ball dropped and all that stuff. And there were so many cliche references to the 2000s, early 2000s, late 1990s, but in a way where I was loving it. Like it was like to the point where
Right.
I was like, oh my God, it's so much of it here. Like to the point where they were like chatting on AIM and he sends a message and it because an away message comes up that he's burning a CD, like all these things that we did, on a computer at the time,
Yeah.
and dial-up modems and things like that. But the reason I bring it up is because it's so much, but it's on purpose and like to get that vibe in there. You have it well in this. You do it really well in Night of the Witch Hunter. I think you brought me back to the late 90s, early 2000s, but not overwhelmingly to the point where I was like, okay, Patrick, enough of this shit. Like I get it.
Yeah.
I get where we are. I get the understanding of the time. I did it. You balanced it so perfectly, and I think it brought me right back to that time. Not that I wanted to be back to be 14 years old again, but I'm just saying, like in a way that it was very nice that you did it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that was definitely like maybe not top of mind, but like in the back of your mind when you're working on something like this is it's very easy to just like drop a lot of music references and to like have it be very, like you said, cliche and kind of
Yeah.
fits that mold. But I was looking for the emotional truth, I guess, of being a teenager in the 90s. I was 16, 17 in 1999. So like I was right there. Like I remember the people, I hung out with the kids in the black trench coats and like the stoners and all these other kids. And so like I wanted to capture the emotional truth of it. And then I figured just by doing that, the references would come along naturally.
Mhm.
And so that's what my idea was, like not to force anything, but if I remembered something, then it's something that stuck with me, and that's something that'll probably resonate for other people as well.
Yeah, and that's so I watched Y2K on my own. I'm at 38. Will be 39 this year. My wife's 28, so she's 10 years younger than me. So she born in
Uh,
96, and so there are things in life where you're just like, you. I don't think you're gonna get the same out of this. This Y2K movie was made for us. Like it's not
yeah,
made for her. And that's the thing. So like but this kind of a story, she's not really into horror, but if she was into horror, she could read this story. I feel like she would get the references and she would understand the references, but it wouldn't be like one of those things that if you didn't get them, then it would take away from the book. And I think that sometimes that
yeah,
balance needs to be met to be like, okay, we're trying to put you back in time to this specific period of time, but not overwhelming to the point where if you don't understand that time, then you're not really going to get what's going on. And I think you balanced it really well, and that's what I was trying to point out.
awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of those things that this whole 90s, I think this whole Killer VHS series has been able to do through all of the authors is put us into a period where VHS tapes were the regular thing. You popped a VHS tape to watch something. And I think that's what this whole series is about. And I think one of the cool things that I had never heard about you, no offense to you at all,
No,
but
no worries.
until Killer VHS. And that I think is a huge thing to me in this series of books where Night of the Witch Hunter falls into is that I didn't know some of the other Alex Epstein. I didn't know who they were when I first picked up these books, but it's given me the opportunity that now I'm probably going to read every Killer VHS book that ever comes out, even if I don't
Yeah,
know the author or anything. And I think the cool thing is they all fit. They all like I don't. I feel like if you didn't know it was different authors, you wouldn't know in a way that you guys all have your own touch on the books,
right.
but they also have the same vibe to them, which what makes it work in my opinion. Like I think that's what it does.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said about Alan, it's like
Yeah.
he's looking for the talent and the stories and finding the right projects that fit the vibe. So whether it's like somebody like Alex or me, who's maybe like not broken out
Mhm.
into like a broader audience past like the sort of smaller horror writing enclave, or like Brian, who's like had books with the bigger publishers and done some
Yeah.
screenwriting and stuff like that. You have somebody who has that background. Um, and yeah, each book I think I've loved the series as well. It's they all feel like you could find them on the shelf, but it doesn't repeat itself. Like on the
Mhm.
shelves in like the Blockbuster or the Hollywood Video or something, you could go and like find these, or at Suncoast Video in the mall or something. Like you would see these on display,
Mhm.
and each one's a different experience, but same vibe, similar
Yeah.
vibes.
And they touch on different characters really too. I mean, if you think about it, and they're also, for anybody who doesn't know, these Killer VHS series of books are not connected in any way, other than the fact that they all feature a VHS tape in it, basically.
Yeah,
And so, like, that's the basic, link between them. They all have cool covers. Like, if you look at them on the shelf, they look, again, people compare them to the modern day Goosebumps in the sense that it's an adult Goosebumps because, again, they also look so good on the shelf together and all that stuff. And, but they also individually, like, there's only been two books by the same author. So that's Brian has his own, killer, Kenny King Kills and then Kenny King Kills again.
yeah,
But otherwise, it's all different authors. And each feature like a monster or a specific character, or like they're not all basically the same story told from different authors. And that's what's really cool about this too. It's like you mentioned it. It's like an anthology almost, but in different novella formats. And I think that you set yourself apart with this witch hunting part, but also like there's this like fish out of water moments I loved about it too, where like
mm,
there's this like elements that like would be more in a comedy, straight up comedy than you would have in a horror book, and I think that was pretty cool in it. There's some drama, there's some horror, there's some jokes, it's just I think it has everything, and you packed it all into a novella, which is very impressive in my opinion. Not to make your head really big
yeah.
on this
Well,
podcast, the screen's only so big right now.
I'll take it. I'll tell let's just see how far we can expand it. We'll go for it. I um with the story, I wanted to get as much into it as I could because like get an opportunity like this with the Killer VHS novella.
Yeah.
It's a series that's been established. It's a series that's like had a lot of success that has
Mhm.
had a reach to an audience, and so there is a pressure that comes on to perform to reach that standard or live up to it or surpass it or wherever you land. And so, I knew the story couldn't just be horror. It had to, there is the chase element. There is, like you said, that fish out of water, the time travel. There is a lot going on. And I tend to write long and then cut down. And this is the case. And so when you do that, one of the benefits I think is that you learn how to like keep a lot of stuff, but tighten it up. And
Mhm.
so it fits within those boundaries. And hopefully that's what's happened here.
I think so. I'm actually even more impressed now that you mentioned that because I didn't read it as someone who cuts some things out like that. You definitely read it like a story that you written that way. So like it's nice to see that you actually write long and cut short and it actually flows pretty well and rate. I didn't feel like it was choppy or anything like that. I felt like it's smooth and through the whole story. Do you have a fandom for witches? Do you have to research to make sure you got things correct in the sense of that stuff too, or is it just something that came to you?
No, no. And I say that because I knew that there is a big the Wiccan
Yeah.
community and people who are interested in witches. I didn't want to step on any toes, so to speak. I didn't want to kind of get things wrong. So I sort of set out to make this. I think of this book, and this is around the same time period, like X-Men comics from the 90s or like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where yes, you're giving nods to the history, to the lore,
Yeah.
to these other things. But ultimately, it's like one girl with powers versus this evil man who has powers that may be stronger than her. And it's a
Mhm.
question of how do you overcome these powers? Like I grew up on the X-Men comics in the 90s and like the sort of like the cartoons and everything, like the
Yeah.
bombastic use of like we're blasting lasers and rays and like I wanted to have that feeling in a book. Like they were blasting our powers and our different auras and everything
Mhm.
like that. And so basically I wanted it to be more, I don't want to say more comic booky, but kind of have that feel of
Yeah.
like this is a big actiony type of thing. Don't look too deeply for like specific spells and stuff. They will not be in here.
Well, I mean, does that help with not taking yourself too seriously? Does that help with the book? It's not like a book you're gonna be like, oh, if you're in the Wiccans, if you're into witches, you're into this whole thing. Like, this is definitely gonna be your book. This is more of a like I hate to say campy, but like has that campiness to it, so it's not fully to take itself seriously.
Yeah, and I mean that's I look at those like movies from that time
Yeah.
where it's again you're giving nods, you're giving winks to things, but you're not necessarily laying out a full ritual for someone to perform. I think that's a different book. And
Yeah.
that it's not the book that I was writing. This is a book ultimately about the characters as
Yeah.
well. It's about Josie. It's about her relationship with her family, with her friends, with her town, and then how the appearance of Goodman Price, this evil witch hunter that she summons accidentally, like how that throws everything into chaos and how
Hmm.
she deals with it and overcomes it, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think that you go along that journey in this, and it's not a long book like you mentioned. So this journey is not so long in the sense that it takes you a long time to read it, and you feel like the journey is there. You feel like you're doing it all along with you. You relate to some of the characters in this book, and I think you did a great job with that. And I think the length of it is something that's going to do another reason why it's going to be successful in my opinion. Like so Killer VHS, obviously you have that background now of the 5 or 6 books that have come before yours that helps you know, set a solid foundation for people going, Killer
Right.
VHS, I'm going to buy this book no matter what's going on in it. But also, I think the length nowadays with things like Goodreads counting the number of books you read in a year
Oh,
and the
sure.
TBR list and all that stuff, I think people want that shorter book. I think that's, our attention spans are a lot less. Like, I'll throw one in there when I'm reading a couple long books where I'm just like, okay, Alan just sent me an advanced copy of a book, D7,
Oh
that
yeah.
is like 76 pages or something like that. I'm like, perfect. So I can get it between my 2 longer books. Like when I'm reading a Stephen King book
Yeah,
and whatever,
exactly.
I can,
Like,
I just read Order of the Phoenix. Harry Potter. I've
okay.
never read the Harry Potter
Yep.
series, so I'm reading through those ones. And damn, that's a long freaking book. And
Right.
and now I'm ready for a novella to just take get something in there, read something quality, and get a good story, but not be reading it for a month and a half.
Yeah, I am the same way. I tend to have I'll have a novel going and a short story
Yeah.
collection going because I think people just respond to different lengths of
Mhm.
story. It's like you get a different experience from it. And yeah, sometimes it's you don't want to call it a palate cleanser necessarily, but maybe like the length palate cleanser where you're like, I love a good doorstop. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like I'll read a good Stephen King big
Yeah.
book that can do curls with or something. But like ultimately, you also need something short, and that's hopefully what we have with the Killer VHS series.
And you do, and I think it fills that gap. And it also, like, in my opinion, like if those people, like I wasn't huge into prose reading, I didn't read novels. I was read comic books, I read short stories here
Hmm.
and there. But I just didn't read that much until recent years. And this would have been an entry level thing for me too. Like, I'll get this in there, get a rich book read. Oh, this is a quality book. This is what it can be like, and then step to the next size, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I treat some of Stephen King's books like I'm planning to read The Stand this year, maybe It, and I think I'm going to read them in like 3 chunks. So I'm almost
Yep.
reading them in like 3-part stories. I'm trying to figure out where's a good stopping point, but like I feel like as I read it, I'm like, okay, this is a good stopping point. I'm going to stop. I'm going to read another book in between and go to the next part of the book because damn, it's a long time. I don't know if I could be entrenched in a world of Stephen King's mind for
It's
that long.
it's a lot. I read the Dark Tower series like a couple of years back, and that is like massive. It's several
Yes.
books, and some of them in towards the middle and end of the series are chunky as
Yes.
well. So, you know, it is something where you are in this world for a long time, and
Mhm.
sometimes that can be a good thing. Sometimes it's very rich and dense, and other times you need a break. And I
Yeah.
do not fault you for that at all.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I also feel like I find myself in the middle of a book, like say even a Stephen King book. I read it, I go, he could have cut this out. And I probably wouldn't have said that if it was shorter, meaning that like my mind, I think immediately goes to this is a super long book, and I don't need this
Right.
segment. I did it when I was reading Order of the Phoenix from Harry Potter. There were sections in there where like I've seen the movie, and so I'm like the movie doesn't have specific things in there. I'm like, yeah, she probably could have cut all this out and it would have been fine. It would have been instead of 1,000 pages, it would have been 600 pages and it would have been fine. But I think I only do that because I'm thinking about how long the book is, and so like if the
Mm.
story was written well, and most of Stephen King's stories are written well. It's just there's sometimes because of how long the book is, I'm like, yeah, you probably could do without this, and I probably wouldn't do it if it was a shorter book, you know.
I got
But
you. Yeah. I mean, that's with this book with Night of the Witch
yeah,
Hunter, because it's the Killer VHS thing,
yeah,
I came into like writing and editing it as thinking this is the movie version
yeah,
already. So this is what would the movie version of this be like? And like you said, there's when you look at like, the Harry Potter books
yeah,
versus the movies,
yeah.
you can see how they've like condensed and tightened things up. So I wanted to skip to the condensed and tightened up version.
Mhm.
for Night of the Witch Hunter, and so hopefully that's what we have.
I'm hoping for, I mean, a feature film would be great for all of these things, but I'm also thinking that all like a Black Mirror-esque style TV show somewhere where like each episode is a different Killer VHS novel or your
Mm-hmm.
novella. So like you have like a specific episode or whatever that's based on Night of the Witch Hunter, and then there, I think that's the future. That would be amazing.
All right,
But again,
from your lips to Hollywood's ears.
I would
Let's
also
see.
take feature films of all of them. So that's also where I'm at on this stuff. Because I will say that there, and I'm not just saying this because you're on here, and because I could shit all over the other offers if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of guy anyway, but they're all good. That's the thing too, is and
Yeah.
that's probably we've mentioned Alan enough times on this podcast episode, but like it's probably one of those things where you're not the only person to pitch him a story like Night of the Witch Hunter to him to say, hey, this is a good Killer VHS, story, and then him saying, no, it's not, we're gonna pass. You're probably not the only
Right.
person who pitched him stories, and it's not like someone pitches him a story and be like, yeah, I need a story, let's put it out. There's probably a number of people who have been declined on their stories for the Killer VHS series, and there's only a certain number that he wants to put out at certain times financially and just overloading the market. And so yeah, your story was past the grade on that. Did you have to cut it down? You mentioned you cut it down, but did you have to cut it down because of the novella size of it? Like, was this a longer book as it was in general, or you just write long in general for novellas?
Yeah, I just wrote long for the novella, and I
Okay.
don't think necessarily this was quite far over the word
Okay.
count or where I was aiming. It's just that there was enough extraneous material that when it went into editing, it's easy to kind of find the places to make cuts or to
Mhm.
combine things. I give all credit to Alan and his editing team as well for finding these opportunities. And just I like an editor who says stuff like um, very simple solutions, right? Like
Mhm.
are simple and they seem simple, where it's like we add a little bit more tension here,
Mhm.
which is a broad note. It can be taken in a lot of different
Yes,
ways.
different
But I
ways.
like that because then it's like a challenge. It's like trying to figure out, okay, how do I make this? How do I fulfill that in a way that's true
Mhm.
to my writing and what I have there? And so that's really helped ramp up the drama and then just ramp up the sort of like the journey of the characters and making sure that each stop along the way is there's something dangerous that is confronting them and then pushing them on to the next location in the
Mhm.
story.
I talked to Brian, a colleague on the podcast, about his Killer VHS books as well as other novels too, but he had a sequel. Is this something that, I mean, I've read the book and people haven't read the book yet, so we're not going to spoil the ending and stuff like that, so on and so forth. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. Like, is there more story that you could tell in a different version, different take, different whatever to have a sequel of this book come out? Or is this it? Like, this is just you've told the
No,
story?
I say never.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
give that
Yep.
the cliche author answer who's
Yes.
not willing to commit just yet. But there was definitely like big
Yes.
seeds planted in the story where there could possibly be I don't know if you would call it sequel. I would say like the time travel element
Yeah.
definitely inspired a lot by the Back to the Future movies.
Hmm.
And how the timelines can, things can happen, and that's where I'll leave it at.
Well, you have the time travel aspect, with the timing of a VHS tape, which had things like Back to the Future, so on and so forth. But also, it's a horror comic book or a horror book. I mean, and so like
Yeah.
horror never dies. Like that's the thing. Like it's always an opportunity for someone to be like, at the end of a horror movie for them to just see the eye open, and you're like, oh, they're not actually dead, and look at that, they're moving on, and those kind of things and the tropes that go involved with those things. So there's always opportunity, even if as cheesy as it might be, and as much as we would go, God dang it, why did they do that? There's always an option for a
Right.
sequel in that sense. But yes, I didn't know. Like I know you obviously lived in this world while you were writing this, and so here I guess it's a follow up question, and that is like, would you want to? Like, is this something like, would it be something be fun to continue telling stories in this thing? Or would you just rather, I mean,
Yeah.
here's my question. Would you rather just Alan be like, hey, we're going to tell another story with Killer VHS 12 with an entirely different plot?
Either both.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
think both. I'm greedy. I'm
Yeah.
greedy. I'll take both.
Tell
But
both. Yeah.
honestly, like it was written starting out as like a supernatural slasher, and it's a little bit
Okay.
more than that, I think.
Yep.
But slashers always come back, and
Yep.
whether different context. who knows? Maybe it'll be Night of the Witch Hunter in space. I
I was
can't
just
make
gonna
any
say that. Like
promises.
you took the words out of my mouth. I love it. Night of the Witch Hunter versus Candy Cane. There you go, right
Oh,
there.
that's well, I would love to work with Brian on that.
Yeah,
So
a
we'll put
crossover.
that
There
in
you
the
go.
put it in the ether right
You
now.
need
That's
Alan just needs to do like the Marvel like television series version of this, like the Defenders on Netflix, where like he
right.
builds them all together. So like all of a sudden out of nowhere, all these people, all these characters from all these different Killer VHS like in one book where they're all like trying to fight crime.
Oh,
they're all superheroes. Some
that would
random
be
ass
fun.
thing. But I
You
mean,
know,
yeah,
stranger things have happened.
I love it. So I also we mentioned a little bit about the packaging behind it. Again, it looks like Killer VHS. It has that cool thing. I don't have one right here. I pre-ordered it. I'll tell you that much, but I don't have the actual book here in front of me. But it has it looks like, oh, there it goes, there's a VHS. So it has like a VHS look to it. It has the purple. This is purple, which is cool because there's different colors for different ones. The artwork, the design, we mentioned that, but I wanted to point out the fact that I'm a designer by trade, so I actually am, in love with Alan's work in general. Books covers
Hmm.
do help sell books. Let's be honest, right? I mean, like when you open the book up and you're halfway through the novel, it's the actual writing that keeps you going. But
Sure.
to actually look at the internet nowadays, where most of us are buying books online and things like that, you're actually looking at the cover before anything else. You're not calling your local bookstore as often and being like, "Hey, can I get this book?" without even knowing what it looks like. You know what it looks like, and
Right.
so this cover is going to draw people in my opinion. Alan's design work on it is fantastic, but also Mark Voltich,
Valletich?
Voletich.
Valletich, I think. Yeah.
Okay, did a fantastic job bringing the witch hunter and your characters to life in a way that totally shows late '90s horror and VHS style to me. Like it's perfect in my opinion.
Yeah.
What
I
do
mean,
you think?
I totally agree. I
Yeah.
thought Mark just like knocked it out of the park
Mm,
really with the design and I worked with Alan on figuring out because each of the Killer VHS covers, I probably hope I'm not revealing anything, trade secrets or
yeah.
anything, but is inspired by a movie poster or a combination of movie posters. And so I went to Alan and he was like, "Well, what movies do you think of when you think of your book? And like what
Mm,
design elements would you like to see?" So I sent him a bunch of ideas. He had some ideas as well. Um, and kind of mocked them up. And then
mhm.
you turn it over to the artist and say, "Here's this, make something beautiful out of it." And
Yeah.
then he does. And you're like, wow, okay, this is amazing. I wanted something that captured that mood of two girls being menaced by this supernatural force and having like the school there in the
Mhm.
background. And yeah, I mean, just knocked it out of the park. And with the purple, I think it's just a cool visual
Mhm.
experience for
Mhm.
folks.
And it has like with the horror sticker on that's on all of them, that little sticker on it, like the VHS. For a while there, before these books came out, I know a buddy of mine, Joseph Schmalke, who's a comic book writer and creator here in Maine, had
Mm-hmm.
some comics come out that had the VHS variant cover, and so the whole thing looked like old VHS, like red stickers on there. Please be kind, or
Right.
I know kind of thing. And it became a thing for a little bit, like, oh, this is kind of cool. And again, I think we live in an age where nostalgia and thinking back to the 1990s and things like that is a cool thing. First of all, anybody who thinks it was better back then is probably crazy anyway. Because let's be honest, there's a lot more. I don't know if we just got pushed back to the 1990s, whether or not you'd be happy or not.
Right.
There's a crazy world going on right now, but still, I think that like the 1990s were probably not as luxurious as people thought they were. But I think we have this vibe nowadays that people want this like nostalgic look to things, and I think this fits perfectly in that, and it brings you back, and it makes you want to watch those. It makes you want to watch classic horror films and slasher films just by looking at it.
Yeah, I mean that's the hope, right? And like the
Yeah,
thing about nostalgia is like you get the best or better version of the
yeah,
past without
yeah.
having to be back in
Be
it
back.
and
Yes.
like deal with like, you know, hanging out in high school and things like that. I'm like, leave that stuff behind, but give me the movies, give me the
Yeah.
books and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll take the media,
Yeah.
leave everything else behind. I have no interest.
Yes, exactly. Well, I was thinking about the other day when I was trying to play. So I have a coworker of mine who's a huge into basketball like I am, and some things happened, and I was like, oh, I want to play NBA 2K again on my Xbox. I don't play that. I don't play video games that often. I have a 3-year-old and an
Yeah.
11-month-old. I don't play video games that often, and so. I put it on and I'm like, oh, cool. I started playing and I sucked at it. I couldn't get the shots down. The timing was off. I was like, this is horrible. I don't want to do this. And I'm like, I got to my 30. I'm only 38, but I still was like
Yeah.
crotchety old man here where I'm like, do you remember when you pressed the button and it shot? It was
Yep.
not like this whole like timing thing and each person had different timing and all that stuff. Like there was like six things you could do on a controller. I said, I missed
Yeah,
those
I mean,
things.
NBA Jam. Yeah, exactly. Those are games I grew up on. It was
Yeah.
very straightforward. Now
Yeah.
it's like you're like you have to give interviews and stuff and do
Yes.
press conferences in the game. I'm like, I don't what I didn't sign up for this mode. What's happening here?
And they're like, yeah, you didn't play well the next game because the fans didn't like you because you said something wrong. I'm like, what did I
Yeah.
do? What the hell? I'm just trying to play basketball here. I don't know what the hell's going on. But it was just kind of funny. I'm like, I feel like the whole thing. But that's the kind of thing I would take. I would take like play Mario in my house. That's what I would play. That's the
Right.
kind of thing I wanted. Old. I actually looked at like I remember sitting after high school playing video games in a buddy of mine's house, and I've always remembered like the game's completely different than they actually are. So like if I go to actually find the game, I'm like, this game was fantastic. You used to be able to drive these ATVs, and you could go anywhere, and come to find out you could go like nowhere. Like it was like you could go up this
Yeah.
mountain. That was it. But in my mind, it was like I could go to New York City if I needed to. It was insane. No, never turns out the same way as you remember it for sure. But what this series does and what Night at the Witch Hunter does is it gives you that opportunity to have new things, new stories that are created in a time frame when you are back there without having to go back there physically and actually be back there, which is fantastic. And I think it's short to the point, and I think you nailed it out of the park with this book. Would you? I mean, now it's not out until March 18th, as we're talking here, which is about a month away. But like, are you happy 100% with the way the book turned out and are excited for
Oh,
people to see it?
yeah, totally. Absolutely. I think it really surpassed my expectations for and I had high expectations for it going into it, knowing what Alan had done with the other books in the series, and just the word of mouth so far has been great. I've had a lot
Mhm.
of people, people finding me for the first time, like yourself and other
Yeah.
folks who are saying like, "Hey, I haven't heard of you, but this sounds amazing." And early reviews, when you see somebody say, "I've never read Patrick Barb before, but I'm
Yeah.
going to go seek out more stuff,"
Hmm.
that's the best compliment I can get. Like I love people who already reading my stuff. Keep
Yeah.
reading it if you're out there. But new people is so great because
Yeah.
it's like I'm you're reaching somebody and you found the right way to them.
Hmm.
And this story was one, like I said, been working on it for a long time in terms of like back of the mind, sort of letting it percolate and everything. And then to see it as a book, see it as part of this series, see the design, the artwork, the page, like the interior pages being
Hmm.
like in that sort of design for the interior, it really is something special, and I'm hoping folks are gonna connect with it once it's out in March.
The other cool thing I would say with this Killer VHS thing is that the packaging. If you order it from Shortwave, which I recommend you doing, order it
Oh yeah,
directly from their stores. Like you get it in a box that looks like has Blockbuster themes to it, and it has this. You get a membership card. I have one right here actually. Yeah, you get a membership card. That's the Killer VHS membership card with the number on it and all that stuff. Like you're going to go to a video store, which is so funny because like the number of people who actually like the younger generation who are like, what's a membership card to something? But yeah, it's because
I
I
love
actually
it.
have for my for the podcast, I made some like homage stickers, and one of them is the Blockbuster logo, but it's just capes and tights on
Nice.
it instead and so on. And it's so funny because I went to a comic convention and sat up a table and handing out promotional stuff and stuff like that. And the number of people, kids who walk by, the parents are like, "You don't even know what that is." I'm like, "Yep, it's true,
Yep.
100%."
You,
But yeah, the packaging is like that's a cool thing. So if you order it from Shortwave directly, you get it in a way that's different than if you would order it from your local bookstore. Not that you say you shouldn't, but like
oh
this is a
sure.
cool with Shortwave being such a small publisher. This is a cool way that you could support the publisher and the writer in a way that's different than I think some of your bigger publishers for sure.
Exactly. You get a lot for your
Yeah,
dollar there when you're getting the packaging. I don't want to throw them away, the boxes that they come in. I because
me
I'm
too.
not only am I an author, I'm also a customer.
Yes.
And they put Alan puts together such fantastic packaging.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those guys who I love like special edition Blu-rays and special edition hardcovers of comics, and I have to have the absolute edition and the archive
Yes.
and whatever. And like this feeds that
Yeah.
need that I have. The packaging alone is just spectacular.
I think I've sent people books and things like other packages to people in the boxes too, because I've had some like there's five or six
Yeah,
of them, and I was just like thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool. Someone else is gonna be like, what the hell is this? And hopefully that's marketing, and that's it. Like I've sold like a Blu-ray on eBay or something like that, and I've sent it in that box because like maybe
oh
that
sure.
person's gonna get that packaging and be like, what the hell is this shortwave stuff? And maybe they Google it and find out. But yeah, it is kind of funny how you keep those and you want to keep them all because even when I sign up every once in a while, like if for the Candy Cane Kills, I missed that at the Witch Hunter, but for the Candy Cane Kills again, I was able to get on the list of press people who get the advanced physical copy, and
Hmm.
he sends those in the full get up. Like it's not
Oh,
even like he
nice.
sends it in a padded envelope just because you get the book to read it. Like it's the actual book in a box with the membership card and all that stuff. And I was like, that's a really cool thing that Alan's doing over there. And I know he had some hiccups with just distribution because of a major distributor, going bankrupt. But
Oh, sure.
hopefully things turn out well in the future. People can get more because I want more access to them. I want people to get it. But until
Yeah.
there's more access to it, Shortwave Publishing's website is the way to get a Night of the Witch Hunter. And if you order it now, the other thing you get is a benefit. I think he sends them out like a week or two prior to the actual release date.
Hmm.
I think what he does when on his so if you order it on bookshop.org or Amazon or any of the other places that you can order online, they ship it out pretty much on release date or like a day before, so you get it on release
Right.
date. Alan, I think if you pre-order it, it might be on your mailbox on like March 11th, which is even
Yeah.
cooler if you're really excited about getting it because it will get to you like a week earlier. I'm not promising that, but I'm saying like there's a better chance that's going to happen, and that might not just be a cool fun thing. That might be Alan just being like, I got to get these things out when I get these things out.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I think it's one of the benefits of like
Yeah,
ordering direct from the publisher, any kind of smaller press or medium
yeah.
press. You're going to get that personal touch, and you're going
Mhm.
to get like the packaging. You're going to get it early. Um, no matter how you get it, it's
Yes.
hopefully folks are enjoying it. But there are bonuses.
Yes. Well, that's always what I said. Like I've always said to people on the end of a podcast where I'm like, okay, buy the book. I'm like, if it's between buying the book on Amazon and not buying the book, buy the book on Amazon. Because if it's
Hmm.
not buying the book, means you don't support anybody. If you buy the book
Right.
on Amazon, yes, you're supporting a major conglomerate corporation, but you're also supporting the writer and the publisher. So like, it's if you have to pick a choice between that's your only options, then do it. The benefit is there's other places like bookshop.org and your local bookstore where you can get it without you supporting a major corporation. And so that's where I hope, or Shortwave's website. I hope you order it from that. But if it literally comes down to I'm not going to get the book unless I order it on Amazon, then just order it on Amazon.
And I would say
It's
this: even if you're that pressed
yeah,
and need the book,
yeah,
um, talk to your library.
yeah,
Order
yes,
book orders. Libraries order what their patrons ask
hmm
for. If you have enough people that say, "I want this book in the library," they're
hmm
going to reach out and buy it and buy it for their shelves, and then you can read it that way. Might take a little longer. You might have to wait, hopefully, if there's a line for it. But that's another way.
yeah,
I don't. For me, it's like find the way to get the
hmm
book
yeah,
in your hands in a way that is legal, in a way
yes,
that we don't want that.
yes.
But whatever it takes. If you want to get it from the library or direct or wherever, as long as you're reading it, I'm happy.
And something that a comic creator, brought up to me last episode, which was Matthew Rosenberg, but about the other thing that's big is if you actually tell your local bookstore that you want it. So like our local bookstore in Bangor, Maine is the Briar Patch. If I were to call him and say, "Hey, Gibran, I would like Night of the Witch Hunter. Is there any way you can get it?" And he would be able to figure out how to get it and so on and so forth. And in all likelihood, because I called for one, he might actually order two or three because I
Yeah.
showed interest in it. He thinks that, okay, if someone so's interested, there's possibly I could sell two more just because of that one person's interest. And maybe he'll stock it on the shelves or so on and so forth. So there's that also. Like if you go into your local bookstore and ask them or so on and so forth, there's a possibility it could go from one copy being brought in to three copies being brought in just because you showed interest in it. And I think that's a huge thing too because it shows people in the future that you're worth
Yeah,
investing time and
exactly.
energy into, and it shows that like the series and so on and so on and so on. So uh, it's a big thing. Just if you contact your local bookstore, they will find a way to get it. It's not like it's not like they're gonna be like, sorry, we can't get that book. They'll call Alan and ask if they can get a book for
Yeah,
them for the
exactly. It's
shop.
a small thing you
Yeah,
can do,
yeah,
but it has a big impact. I
hmm
think is the way I look at it. And bookstores don't they don't always hear from people like that.
Yep.
I've found calling for my own books, and sort of spreading the word that a lot of times you have to do these things to stand out, to get your name out there. And then they're, like you said, they're willing to order a
Mhm.
copy and take a chance on a book because someone is called. And I think readers calling especially is even bigger, an even
Yes.
bigger impact.
Mhm. But yeah, my local comic book shop is the same way because I collect the copies of the trade paperbacks of the ones they use my pull quotes on. So I've had a
Mm.
number of pull quotes used on the back of these things. And so I always get the physical copy, even though I've bought the single issues all over the time and, like whatever. I'm like, I
Oh,
still
sure.
want I want that collected edition because it has that quote on it. And I have a little spot on the shelf for them and so on and so forth. And my
Nice.
LCS owner will always order an additional copy for the shelf once that happens because he's like, well, then I want to be able to pitch it and say, hey, you check the quote out, so on and so forth. So it's like, yeah, it
Hmm.
adds that cool, and bringing it in and actually be able to go into a bookstore and see these Killer VHS shelves on the shelves is cool too. Some bookstores will just order your copy and put it off to the side and never order another copy again. It happens, but
It's fine.
it is what it is. I'd rather that than them been stuck with it forever and ever and ever and ever either, because it also hurts the bookstores.
Yeah.
Sometimes too. So again, local bookstores. I'm not really worried about the conglomerate bookstores. they
Yeah,
can they
they'll
can
they'll
deal with
be
it.
fine.
They'll be fine. But yeah, so Night of the Witch Hunter is a part of the Killer VHS series. It's book number 6 in the series. Author number 5. I'm excited. There's another one coming out this year. The book number 7 will be out. So make sure again, they're not necessary to read the next one, but why not, right? I mean, same thing with Goosebumps. You don't need to read them all to understand it, but you might as well read them all, right? I mean, there's no reason not to.
Exactly.
So grab them all. It's like Pokemon cards. You got to collect them all. No, and they actually go well on the shelf. I actually have mine literally in my Goosebumps collection, which I'm only missing a few now. Then it's my Killer VHS series. I mean, they fit
Oh, that's
next to each
amazing.
other. It works perfectly on the shelf there. But yeah, I'm super excited for people to read it because I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I said, it brought me back in time to the Y2K time. It also, scratched the itch for witchcraft, supernatural horror, superstition. It was atmospheric. It was wonderfully written, and it transported me to that time and really enjoyed it. And I hope other people go out and grab it March 18th from Shortwave Publishing. I'm really excited for people to read it. I hope you are. Hope you're not nervous.
No, 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 no. I am excited. We're it's one of those things where it's soon, right? And you're like,
Yes.
okay, this book's going to be out there in the world, and
Yeah.
I'm very proud of it. Very proud of the work that we've done. Alan, Mark on the cover art.
Hmm.
The whole thing is just something where I am excited for people to read it, experience it, and to tell a friend after they do,
Yes,
leave a
exactly.
review, all those good things.
And I will say, I usually say don't look at reviews, but I just quickly glance at your Goodreads, and you could read reviews. You're fine right now. For right now, you could read
I know.
reviews.
For now, check it out. I will let you know. We'll add an addendum, maybe, like
Yes.
when the turn comes. Hopefully, it doesn't, but you never know. Maybe I'll cast a
Oh,
spell on it.
yes, exactly, right? Well, I was gonna say, like, it's one of those things. Reviews are really not for you. They're really for the other people reading it. So there's no real reason for creators or authors or people have to read them. But sometimes it's nice. And at this point in time, it's a safe zone for you. But I can't promise that will be like that for a while. People
Exactly.
will, for some reason, weirdly hate the fact that it was based in 1999 Y2K. Like they'll just hate that part. That's like they'll hate that altogether. And for some reason, they'll
Uh,
tell
you
you,
know, and like you said, it's not there for the readers. They're not for the authors. I completely agree with that. I've had a short story collection get a review where somebody said, "I hate short stories,"
yes,
and I was like, "Well, okay, all
one
right,
star.
fair,
What?
one
Okay,
star, fair enough." The funniest one-star review I've ever had. I wish I could I someday I
you
may
put on a
print it out,
shirt.
put it on a shirt, put it on
Yeah.
the wall. Just no, that's my North Star. That one star is my North Star. It's my guiding light.
It's a fun thing. I work in the brewing, so I work as a graphic designer for the brewing industry, and it's always funny. One star. I hate IPAs, and it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Or I hate sour beers. It was too sour. I mean, then you're rating it on what you like and not on the, but whatever. Like,
Right, exactly.
in the end, I'm like, it's why are we arguing with this? Like, we used to care so much. It used to be one of these things that we used to like actively look online for these reviews, and now we're like,
oh
we
my
don't
goodness.
care. Now we can't move past that. Like, it doesn't matter. People are gonna say what they want to say on the internet. You know, we've learned this in recent times that the internet has no filter,
No.
and what we did have for a filter has gone away in recent weeks and months. But I really appreciate you taking the time out to chat Night of the Witch Hunter, your Killer VHS book that's coming out March 18th, Patrick. We're so pumped. I'm excited to read everything else you have on your thing. It's going to be added to my thousands of books TBR. So I read some of them here and there. In between my Stephen King books, I'll read a short story from here.
There we go.
There we go. Fit right in there. You're the perfect author for that. And I'm looking forward to anything else that comes out in the future. I'm really excited. But yeah, people should pick up Night of the Witch Hunter or the Killer VHS series on March 18th. Sound good?
Cool. Absolutely. Thanks, Justin. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking the time out and coming on. I really appreciate it. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right, man. Talk soon.